Leonardo, and I'm here to talk to you about the Qt Quick Components project. It's good to see the room all full. So first, what's it all about? If we could summarize Qt Quick Components in one sentence, I would say that we want to provide a ready-to-use component set with native or custom look and feel for Qt Quick. But before we start digging a bit further into the project, I'd like to introduce myself. As I said, my name is Leonardo. I'm originally from Brazil. I'm working now in Oslo as part of the Qt team inside Nokia. I'm part of the UI team in Oslo, the team that's responsible for the UI part of Qt, taking care of the Qt widgets, graphics view, and also now working more closely with Qt Quick. I'm leading the Qt Quick Components project. Before that, I also worked with the Animation API and with QML, which is the language that's the basis for Qt Quick. And I've moved to Oslo now 1.5 years ago, coming directly from Brazil, from a very sunny city, where it's sunny all year. And now I'm in a country where the winter takes 6 months long. But actually, there's one good thing about being in Norway. When I was in Brazil, I was always the last one chosen to be part of the soccer team. But now in Norway, in the part of the company team, I'm always one of the first, kind of the most valuable player in Norway. So if my soccer career doesn't work out, I have a second option in Norway, I know. And before joining Qt, I worked with INDT, which is the research center of Nokia in Brazil. There, I had the opportunity to work with a group of designers together with developers developing applications for mobile. So we have seen in practice how it is difficult to work from an abstract concept, from design concept, and trying to turn those in reality. We have seen cases like the designers coming to talk to developers and saying, oh, please just change this mockup here. Just add some ifs in your code, if else, and do it work, make it work. They didn't understand what we really had to do to change the code and make something that seems simple on the design to make that reflect on the real implementation, especially when you're looking on embedded and embedded platforms. So, coming back to the project, this is our agenda. It's just a picture of my whiteboard. That's the first draft that I had for the presentation, but don't worry, the presentation I'm going to give you doesn't look as much as my first idea, so you don't have to try to understand that. I think not even I would understand if I read it again, so we could simplify it by, first I would like to give an introduction of what's the context, why we're doing this project here, what's our motivations on working on this. Second, introducing the project, what we have now and what we want to achieve with what we're doing. And finally, showing some demos and also thinking about the next steps we want to take. So first, the context. We in Qt, and Qt as in general, has been a very successful technology, and the desktop platforms, we have seen amazing products. Here's just like a couple of few of them that we have brewed in-house, eating our own dog food, as we heard in how important that is during the keynotes. You can see creator, assistant, designers, a lot of applications that we're using on a daily basis for development inside Qt. And I know you guys also used a lot of these applications, and then you can put a lot of great applications that are not here for our partners have created with Qt. But most of the concepts we put inside Qt, they are based on the desktop concepts of Windows and dialogues that have been established maybe 20 years ago, and they're still valid, there's still people using it, and they feel comfortable with it. And we in Qt have been able to abstract those concepts and make those more easily reusable for application developers. And we are certain that these concepts will continue to be very relevant and important for us. You can see Creator we're using, it's our core platform for development, so we want to continue to support the desktop and improve it as a platform inside Qt. But a new challenge that we're facing is that we're seeing Qt running more and more in different devices, in different platforms, and with different requirements from those, especially for the UI development, from those that we understand from the desktop side. So we have seen here just as simple as a small sample of devices that are running Qt now in the large scale netbook devices, mobile phones with different user interfaces, with different requirements. And we know that in Qt, our mission is clear. We want to make the life for application developers easier and simpler so that they can focus on the real value that's creating platforms, applications, and deploying them to the end user. So we want to take these as our challenges for solving those problems in a cross-platform way inside Qt. So with Qt 4.7, we did a big step in that direction. We released Qt Quick and QML. How many of you here have tried Qt Quick or have seen the presentations of Roberto and this morning? And oh, I see it's a big number. It's really impressive. That's a good thing because my presentation is I'm not going into deep into Qt Quick itself. But I'm going to here just do a summary in one slide of what my opinion is Qt Quick. So Qt Quick is a declarative language, so you focus on what you want to provide in the user interface instead of how. So you declare your elements, but you have an engine underneath that's taking care of processing that and making it easier for you to just define what elements you want on the screen, what properties you want them to have, and how you want them to animate, and that's all. It's very flexible. It was created for user interfaces, and it's designed for creating differentiated user interface and animated so that those that you don't have constraints on your UI design from the technology part. So you can create new ideas, you can experiment, you can iterate. And that brings us to the next point. That one of the main points that in my opinion, is that QML and Qt Quick makes it possible to designers and developers working on the same technology. So this iterative cycle that we see a lot in practice, that the designers work separately in the team and they provide mock-ups, and then they pass that forward to developers, and then they have to re-implement that on a new set of technologies, that we can take to the next step using Qt Quick and QML, because they're really using the tools, they will look at from a different perspective, but using the same technology and working together and make it easier to have this interactive cycle much faster. And last but not least, Qt Quick and QML is cross-platform. It is Qt. So we're not renegating our past with its new technology, and you can get QML and run it everywhere where Qt is supported. And one very important point, the last one here, is that Qt Quick is extensible. So we were last year in our customer validation meetings, and one of those that we were there, I think was one point I remember today, that we got the feedback from, I don't remember his name, but we got the feedback from one guy that worked with declarative technologies, one technology that's similar to Qt Quick, one competitive in the market, and he said, oh, I like this, I like these declarative technologies, you are very productive when you use those, but sometimes you hit the declarative wall. What I do when the declarative engine is doing something that I don't like, or I need to extend it, with Qt Quick and QML, we have this, I think it's a very nice positive point that you can always fall back to C++ APIs with the what Qt provides you, and you can also extend it with C++ APIs and complement if there's something that's not available in QML. So you don't need to use QML as your magic language that's going to solve all your problems, but you can use it where it fits you, where it gives you some advantages. So Qt Quick is extensible. We have already just released Qt Quick now with 4.7, but we're already working on how we can extend it, how we can develop those plugins that we can put on top of Qt Quick and make you even more productive. So these are some working areas that we're currently looking into. We're working on this Qt Components project that has the aim of creating a component set that's really ready to reuse, that can provide you native look and feel, or you can also customize for your own look and feel using Qt Quick. Besides that, we're also looking into have a better platform integration using Qt Quick. So most of, at least the mobile environments that you look, you usually have a window decoration, you have a status bar where you have the signal of the battery, also the signal of the Wi-Fi strengths, and those. Usually you want that in all the applications, or at least want to have that easily available for you. The mobile devices usually also have different navigation concepts. So as you see in the desktop environment, usually you have multiple windows. You can multiple windows active at the same time that you can see and can transition between them. But the mobile devices is rather more simpler, but it's different. You usually have just one main view that's active, and you can either have it full screen or you can navigate back and forth between those pages. So these are something that also we want to provide as a better integration with the mobile environment. The user input also varies a lot between those different embedded and mobile platforms, so we have to take care that we have a good integration with the virtual keyboard if that's available, or with the hardware keyboard. So we're looking into having a good integration wherever you use Qt Quick out of the box. So now that you have a bit of the context why we started the project, I'm going to start talking about the Qt Components project itself. So as I said before, we want to have a ready-to-use component set. We have a twofold objectives. Our first priority is to target the application developers. We wanted to make easier for application developers to have this component set, and for them, from what we discussed, we'd see they have at least two important use cases. One is to have native look and feel. If you want to develop your application and you want that to integrate and have the look and feel that the platform provides you, you want to have a component set that gives you access to that. And the other one is to have the ability of getting a component and customize it to your own brand. For example, if you're developing a Tentacle application, you want your Tentacle application to have the same look and feel, whether you're using it on the mobile, on the netbook, or on your car, or on your TV. You, as an application developer, would like to promote your brand across devices. So another question, just about curiosity, how many of you have interest in having the application you're developing running on more than one platform besides the desktop? Yeah, so we see it's a big number. I would say it's rather 50% of the audience here. So yeah, that's the two use cases that we are targeting for the application developers. But besides that, we also want, in the mid and long term, also target the platform developers, those that want to create a new platform. So there we want the Qt Components project to provide the basis for new styles. We want to provide the Components API so that the components, even if they look and feel completely different in different platforms, that they still are based on a common API. We want to provide models that are pieces of reusable code logic, that you don't have to test it, reusable code logic that you can reuse while creating a new platform. We also want to be very integrated with the tooling so that you can create your own components, but still use the tools that we provide and have a unified user application development story. So also for the platform developers, we see two use cases. The first use case, which is probably the most common right now, would be to integrate with existing styles. And just one important point here is that in our project, we're calling styles as the platform look and feel itself. For example, Windows would be a style in our project, or Mac would be another style. You have a platform, you have a widget set with a common look and feel, that's a style for us. Whereas a theme would be more the properties that you can change on the style, for changing probably colors, fonts, and those properties that can affect the style look and feel. So you could create component sets to integrate with native styles. If you have your application or your framework already running, for example, we could create a component set to integrate with the Mac style using, for example, like the Lighthouse example that Jörg just chose in the previous talk. Or another example would be to create new platforms based on Qt components. So we would provide this basis, and you would, instead of having to create all your widget set from scratch, from no base, and kind of defragmenting the user development story for your platform, you could use Qt components and leverage what we are already providing on the user and the application development environment that we are creating. So just to summarize, here's a picture that kind of tries to reflect what I just said. From bottom up, we have Qt with Qt Quick from 4.7. Qt Components is built as a plugin module on top of 4.7. And then, on top of that, we foresee that we might have style implementations that are either native or they are customizable and are custom for each scenarios. For this kind of our vision, where we want to go with this project, and we foresee that there might be people from the community interested in developing the styles. There might also be people interested in reusing more of the base. So exactly how this is going to develop is still an open question. This is still a labs project, so we're still researching several aspects of what I'm showing here to you. Okay, so now that I talked about the vision, let's go back to reality. So that's like where we want to achieve. So let's say, show to you guys where we are now, or how do we start it? Better, how do we start this project? So this project started with some base ideas that were originally created on the Widgets NG project, which Marius, our ex-troll, started. We started that project, and afterwards, from the beginning this year, we started the Qt Components project. The Qt Components, we began it with starting doing a prototype style for the MX style. For those of you that don't know, the MX is the native style or the native look and feel that the Meego netbook is currently using. The Meego netbook is a netbook that has mouse and touch input, and the MX is in the native toolkit used there. It's using Clutter, and then we prototyped the MX widgets in QML only, and it was a very short term. I think it was not feature complete, but I think it was like a 1 or 2 weeks work that we did that with just our main challenge at that point was to see how easy it is to implement QML or implement widgets on top of QML and Qt Quick. So we implemented that. We have a proof of concept that we're currently not actively working on. But as a summary, before showing you just what we did here, is that QML fits the bill for implementing those user interfaces, even if you have simple components that you want to reuse and you want them to be well tested and you want them to be extensible. QML fitted the bill for us for these cases. But while we did that, we found some pieces of code that we wanted to reuse, that we saw that we could have the opportunity on reusing and implementing different look and feels. So let me show you just 2 examples of what we did on the MX project. First, here you have the gallery. So you can see here this user interface is kind of showing how the MX looks like. So here we have the components in MX, an entry, a label, buttons. It was a proof of concept, but it's working pretty well for the amount of work we invested in it. So you can see here you have an exclusive button group, which is one can be selected at each time. So we have combo boxes, progress bars, and sliders. So here the slider is changing the opacity of the rectangle. And all of this is implemented in QML only. Here we have no integration with the native theme server of any native code, but still we're providing the native look and feel just replicating in QML. And you can see here we have this tooltips that's more like a netbook use case. Probably in mobile, tooltips are not so interesting. Expanders. Basically, we took the user. Look, yeah, it can be annoying after a time, but it's quite cool. Scroll views. Yeah, installing. Yeah. So here are the components like separately, and just showing like an application. Basically what we did here was taking the application from the examples, from the demos that are available in the declarative in Qt 4.7. You can see there's the QML calculator. We just replaced the buttons by native-looking MX buttons. So here you can see the calculator is working, and it's similar as the calculator in QML, just with native-looking MX widgets. So it seems like it's natively integrated with the platform. And maybe if I just first simple example here in the code, you can all see. Here's just to give a simple example, like for accessing using the MX button, you have to do an import with labs MX. That's where the MX module is, and then you can just use button, and this will be the MX button, and then you can set the properties that are available for the button. So it's just to give you a use case. Okay, so this was the MX. Now, coming to the second style that we implemented, and that's the one we are actively working on now. It's the Meego Touch style. So the Meego Touch is also a native implemented toolkit used as the base for the Meego handset UI specification, which is touch optimized, so it's focusing on mobile devices. The native toolkit is graphics view based. So we try to do a proof of concept of re-implementing those widget sets that look native using Qt Quick and QML. Our current implementation of the Meego Touch components integrates natively with the theme server, the native theme server available for querying the pix maps, the font color, the text sizes, paddings, margins. So we are querying that all from the native theme engine. And then we get that, and then we implement the look and feel in QML with that information. And besides that, also what we're investigating in Meego Touch is providing the platform integration. The concept that I talked just before, of being possible of navigating between pages. Meego Touch has this concept of pages where you develop application and say which is the one page that's active, and then you can transition between the pages and click on the button which is on the title bar and then come back. These pieces we are also providing on our current solution with Meego Touch. So let me show you the example of Meego Touch. So Meego Touch, we also created this and similar gallery example where we have the basic components running. So here you can also see that we also provided the title bar with the menu integration in the home and back button as Meego Touch provides. So we have a push button. So these push buttons, the pix maps are being queried from the native Meego Touch theme server, and you have a group button where you can add buttons, and just one button is selected at a time. You can use an API to change that and leave no button selected, or can select many. Yeah, and you guys cannot see it because we're not running on the hardware, but these buttons actually already integrate with haptics feeling too. So when you click, you can feel the haptics as it is provided as a native button in the platform. Here's a checkbox, underlined it. And yeah, it's working. I'm clicking. It's no echo mode, so nothing should appear. Okay, and the multi-line one just to show. And if you run this example also on the Meego Touch enabled device, instead of, you can either use a hardware keyboard if there is, or the virtual keyboard will pop up, and that will be automatically integrated. The features that are available on the virtual keyboard will be also available on the Meego Touch components line, edit components, I mean. We also implemented a dialog, so we can make the dialog lighter or a spinner. So those are all components available in Meego Touch, and the UI of these are all implemented in QML Qt Quick now. Progress bar. Let's run. See more of the components here. You have the slider. Here down there's a slider with some progression. Vertical slider. We have all switches, which are basically have the same logic as a checkbox, but is a different look and feel for it. So they're bound one to the other. A list component, where we provide a list item. So we're basically implementing a list view that Qt Quick provides us and just styling the list item itself. So for the list item, we're querying for the background pixmap, for the properties for the text, the color, the font, and the font size, and then we just create a list, and it will look like a native list of Meego Touch. And you can also see the position indicator here in a flickable. You can see on the side and down. When I flick here, the position indicator moves. So these are the components we have so far. You can also shortly run here the calculator, which is a similar calculator as the Max one, but we just slightly rearrange for the layout to fit for a Meego device. And here you have also buttons that look like native Meego. And then we have this feature that you can rotate. And this is also something that you will get for free if you are on the device. You will get the rotation from the orientation sensors, and the UI will automatically rotate. But here I have just a button for debugging purposes that you can show the rotation feature. So this is the calculator using native buttons in Meego. So as I showed also a small sample of code, how you use the button in MX. I can show it also here on Meego. If you go to the gallery, you can see here the button. This is instead of importing MX, we just do a different import today. We have import Meego, and then you can use the buttons with the property of the button, and then it will be a Meego looking button. And I also want to show just shortly, not going into details. Maybe I'll show the implementation here. You can see on the left side all the implementations. You can see most of it is just QML. So implementing the widgets in QML. I'm not going into details here, but the code is all on tutorials, so sure maybe later. But here's the implementation of the slider, for example. So we can see that's basically a QML file where we import the base components API and we import the team bridge. This is basically a C++ abstraction that we created to be able to query the native pix maps and the native information from the team server. But that's just abstracted in one component. You can see here this will be basically the API of the slider. And you can see here that it's using a range model, which is just a component that has a reusable piece of logic that you can use to enhance you, to help you to create the slider. And we use this model here. You can see it has another model for the progress. It has some parts of the team bridge for querying the style, and some pieces for creating the pix maps, the mouse area. I'm not getting into details of the implementation itself, but it's more to show you how we implement it. So this is the implementation of the slider that I just showed on the example. It's basically most of it Qt Quick and QML code with just a part of native integration to really query the pix map from the native team engine. So we're integrating with what's already available in Meego Touch. Another example that I wanted to show is basically an application that we started creating. We wanted to, applications, we are working with a group of designers. We wanted to have real requirements of an application running using our components. So it's a notes application where you can add contextual information such as pictures, or we want to see maybe adding contact information or calendar information. So you can create notes, and you can basically query them. So here you have some nodes that are already created. It's still prototype, but at least we have some requirements coming from real applications and designers trying to use the technologies together. Because we are providing new technologies, we still have to experiment. There are different architectural approaches, but one that we are promoting kind of in this Me nodes, at least trying out, is that the nodes that we're creating here, they are models in C++, and then you expose those models to QML, and then you have a custom UI, which you can see here. This nodes UI is mostly custom. It's only QML accessing those nodes models, and using Qt components for providing, for example, those page integration, where you can see here the back button. You can navigate these platform integration bits are coming from Qt components. So you can see here, you can look at some of the pictures. All pictures are still debugging. You can see here some components integration. The toolbar has some button here that you can activate the slideshow. So you can have some parts of native integration. It's still an early prototype, but we foresee at least trying to have some, slideshow is on, trying to get some real feedback and trying to do some real prototyping instead of only doing some simple demos. One of the ideas that we have that we wanted really to create some applications and put them to download and have people really trying it and giving feedback and seeing and validating what we're doing. So you can see back. Okay, so just one feature I didn't show. You can also rearrange the elements. So that's one idea that you had. We can create my new title. You can edit the title, and you could rearrange the elements on your nodes. So you can basically add text and add images. That's the current state. And you can see here you have the pages navigation, the one that I just told, navigate between the pages. This comes all basically as the platform integration we provide. So this is the parts that we have been working since the beginning of the year. So now I just wanted to show, no, not yet. It's like, the last slide here about Meego Touch is an X-ray on just what I showed you. That we are providing today the components as a black box, so we're not exposing all the code that I showed you how we're implementing the button. It's basically internal APIs, it's private. But if we had an X-ray on the Meego, and if we looked at the components, you saw there in the code, we have this import components, which is the lowest layer here. It provides you the base API on which the components are based on. It also provides models that you can reuse as part of reusable code logic that are well tested and used on different platforms. On top of that, you have a theme bridge. If you want to integrate with a native theme engine, if you have that requirement, you can use a similar approach. That's what we are using in the Meego Touch implementation today. So we have a QML element that kind of abstracts the access to the native theme engine for querying pixmaps, fonts, and colors. And on top of that, we have the actual components. And for example, in the Meego Touch style, one requirement that we had from the beginning is that if you were creating Qt components for a specific style, you don't want to limit. You want to have all the components, all the widgets that are available on the native style. You want that also to be available through Qt Quick. So that's one requirement that you have. That's what we're calling the style extensions. So even if you're working on the base API, on a base set of components, if you're creating a new style, you want extensions be part of that. And that's what you have today. If you do import Qt Quick components Meego, you will get all the Meego components that are available. So you will not be limiting your UI because you're not using the native technology in this case. At least that's one case that we want. Like, we want to work based on a common API and based on a common component set, but we don't want to restrict either the UI design or the widgets that are available on the platform. So you have these use cases for people that want to integrate completely with the platform, or they want to be more custom. Okay, so yeah, now it's the slide I was waiting, which is this is one approach we're currently really in early research. Like, we're trying that recently, and we were basically trying to work on a custom style. Basically, that would be like a base component set that would be extensible. So this component set would be really simple. It could be provided as a reference implementation, even inside Qt, but not inside Qt, because even Qt components is not inside Qt, but something that we could maintain and will have the same base look and feel on all platforms. Will be basically a Plix map style with no native integration. But it will provide hooks for you to customize. So this base component set will be customizable. So either application developers could use it to customize it for their own branding purposes, or platform developers could customize it to create a new platform or to differentiate the platforms from existing ones. So I just want to show, it's still early research, but I want to still show some code that we basically hacked together in the project. But this code, the other codes that I showed until now, they're all in the Qt components repository, which I'm showing at the end. This one is still not there yet, but it will come at some point. So I can give a hack preview for you guys here. Yeah, let me start slowly here. It's just the basic idea is that, let me see if I just close this. If you had just one button, that's what I'm using here, but you're using this custom style that we're developing, you will basically get a push button. This is the default push button. The looks and feels of it would be one provided by default. It's a Pix map with a background rectangle. We provide it. So you can change the properties of the basic button here, already set the text and the width. So one way of extending or customizing the button, this base button, would be to do this. Use some properties that the button API could provide, like the background color and the foreground color. So the foreground color we're calling here as the text color. So if we run these buttons, you can see that you get the default. This is the custom button. You could like just change the button color, the background color. That's something that's easy to do in KML. And just think, how would you do that with the QWidget approach today? Yes. Styling. So we'll have to set a style sheet to some, or you have to inherit from QWidget. So it's like here we have a straightforward way of just changing the colors. Going forward, for example, what else could we do? It's like commenting our approach. You can also here showing a bit of Qt quick code. Not going to detail, but it's just like changing the background color if it's pressed. So you can extend it by just rewriting pieces of JavaScript on some parts. You can add a behavior on the background color for animating it, and here also setting an icon. So we have yet another button. So here you can see a button that we just added the icon. Let's go for the next button. One more button. Just see all the ways we can customize a button. It's like search, but then you can see also here, instead of only setting colors, we could actually provide you hooks for re-implementing completely parts of the button. For example, here we have the background. Instead of setting the color, I'm just setting, oh, I want to re-implement the background, I want to change it. So here we are changing basically the background that's provided by default for one different image for the default. So we have a different image for the back, which is a red image here. That's the red background, or the red background if it's pressed. And then we're changing also the foreground, which is the label color. So we have this red button, completely customized background by just re-implementing the background part of the button. And I think this is the last button. I know you guys are probably already tired of seeing so many buttons. But here is like the cool button. Now I'm showing my complete lack of design skills by creating my own button. And then I want to implement the background to be the rectangle instead of a Pix map. It could be anything that you can just reuse anything Qt Quick provides you, or KML. So I created a rectangle here that's like has a rounded corners and has a border width and some strange colors like crimson and salmon. Then just run it. Let's see how it is. Yeah, it looks a bit small. The components there can maybe just increase here the scale on the scene. So you guys can see a bit better. Maybe it's a bit pixelized, but that's because of the scaling. But at least you guys can look at it. So here's the button I just created with even a fancy animation. Not so fancy, but you can see you can customize it, and just added a to-do there. That's just to add a customized text. So if let's say we want to change the label to be something else, or you could change the label to be an image, to be whatever we want, but let's say we want it just to be a text, but we want to change what the text font size is, for example. So let's see what text provides us here. So you can see text has a color, has font.bold, font.family. Let's just use some of these. You can just customize it with Qt Quick. We've got Qt Quick provides you bold true, font. No, let's just try something here. And as we are kind of re-implementing the content, the label itself, we also actually have to take care of the content itself. So the text will be bound to the my cool button.text. So I basically just re-implemented here the text, and I can even add some, if I want to change the color, we can maybe copy here. I want to change the color of my label to, when it's pressed, it's going to be white, otherwise it's going to be black. So here you have a completely customizable button which has the same API, which has the same basis as the other buttons we have seen. So you can see that the font is different. It has a bold, it has a different size, and if you click, it's white. And we could do the same ideas that I'm showing here. For example, for the sliders, I can just show it quickly. We have could have a default slider that we just run, and it has a default look and feel. Just like pixmaps, and by chance these pixmaps are the same ones as the Max that I just showed you. And you can then have one that is customizable. Still not in the API so much, but here we have a progress where we're implementing the background to be also a rounded rectangle, and then the content, which we are calling the progression, to be a rounded rectangle of different color. And then we're changing the handle also to be a rectangle. So it's basically a rectangle slider. Also not very pretty, but at least showing you that you can customize with basically the same base code. You can change this base slider in this completely different slider, which has a animated color depending on how near you are to the end. It's warning you that it's going to explode or something. Yeah, so this is kind of just, this is far from finished. Maybe one last thing, if we want to just show one last thing here, is that if we do the we could just mix the default buttons with the native buttons if we see it's fit, and then I can just use Meego .button. I think it's not recognizing it because it's not finding, but before running, just a small detail, that's for running Meego on the desktop, we need to be using the native graphics system. No. Oh yeah, I forgot the version number, thanks. No. Okay. So yeah, here we have the Meego button. It has a you can see that the size is different because the preferred size and the paddings we're getting from the Meego components we're querying directly from the native Teams engine, while the other buttons are getting the same default size. So here you have a native Meego button just together with the other buttons. It's just important to tell that today the codes are completely different. But as we foresee in the research, one possibility could be that the Meego buttons are actually implemented reusing these extensions that we're providing, or implemented on base of these common buttons, the common base widget set that we could provide. But today the code path, it's different. Okay, so this is what I had to show from the demos. So just to wrap up, besides what I showed now during the presentations, there are still a couple of points that we want to work or that we are currently looking into. We want to develop more styles. I think if we have the more styles or the more different widget sets we implement, the better background we will have on proposing something that is reusable, or finding those reusable pieces of code that we can actually propose as a good start for customizing your own component set. So we're looking into Symbian component set for mobile. We're also actually very interested in having a component set for the desktop and researching how we could integrate and provide a component set that we could use directly from Qt Quick and have access to the native widget sets in the desktop. Yeah, we naturally want to look at more components as we are far from feature complete, and any of the examples I showed you is more like a prototype stage that we have something working, but we are far from reaching 100% compliance with what the native widget platforms already provide. We want to do the haptic support. That's one thing that it's working currently for the Meego, but we could generalize that. We're also investigating the RTL layouting, because we could make the components RTL right to left aware, and make some logic to do the mirroring, but we think that we still need a bit more research on how we integrate that with the tooling, because it's a rather difficult problem to make an RTL right to left solution automatically. Accessibility is also another point that we are looking into. So I know you guys seen a lot of the presentation. I showed even some things that today still don't fit in a unified story. But if there's one thing you guys should take out from the presentation, it's maybe this last slide. You can forget maybe the rest. So what we're doing in this component, what we're doing in this project, what we're trying to achieve. We want to provide a ready-to-use component set with native or custom-looking feel for Qt Quick. So Qt Quick provides you all the flexibility. We are trying to provide you also, besides the flexibility, a bit of ease of use of getting a component set and customizing it for your own needs. And you can always fall back to Qt Quick and do whatever you want with Qt and Qt KML directly. So we have two objectives. First, we want to target application developers, those that want to integrate natively with the platforms they're developing to, or they want to customize their own look and feel for providing some branding, but still have that running on different platforms, on different devices. On the other hand, we want also to create a basis that will be able for existing styles to be integrated in Qt components, and also we're foreseeing this use case where the next application, the next platforms could be created on top of a basis that we provide with this project. So I'd like to thank you for the attention, for the time. And just to finish, before we can go to the questions, I would like just to emphasize that we're running Qt components all as an open source project. We have the Qt components channel in the free node, so we're always hanging out there. If you have any question or want to contribute, we have the Qt components mailing list. And the code is at guitarist.org. The Qt components, as well as all the examples I showed you here, even the Meego notes application, that notes application that we're developing, it's all on this repository. So thanks again, and I'd like to open for if you have any questions or comments. Microphone.
He's here. So I have a pair of questions, but before that, I want to clear a pair of concerns. During your presentation, you showed the Qt component base and the Meego touch and the various styles as an higher layer. So you are actually supposed to use the style directly in your QML application or not? I mean, are you using the specific component or the abstract Qt component?
Today we're using the specific component. So the code that you have there, you have to do an explicit import Meego. What we have today in the Qt components base repository, that's why we're doing the import Qt components, is only models and implementation helpers.
Okay.
But we have this idea that we want still to research of providing a base API, a common API across components, but we don't have that yet. So we don't have a cross-platform component set.
I really think this should be really high priority, because I can see why you want to differentiate the desktop and the mobile case. But as a developer for a mobile application, I look forward to do a native UI in at least 90% of use cases. I suppose everyone here agrees that we want the application to look native on every phone. So what's the point in explicitly setting the Symbian UI, the Meego UI, or whatever when I'm coding? I'd really like to see a common base and have Qt selecting the style, because I mean it will be like having Q Windows widget, a Q Linux widget, and you actually have to use it. I mean, this is totally against the scope of Qt.
That's one concern. Like that's one idea that we have been discussing a lot internally too. But one thing that I tried to explain during the presentation is that we want to have this base API that we want to work on. I think it's important to have this more cross-platform offering, but on the other hand, we also want to have all the native widgets available. So the application developer should have the option to decide. I think we see cases where the application developers want to have 100% native integration, and we also see cases where the application developers, for having this 100% native integration, they need to use components that are only available in that specific platforms. So we don't want to make compromises on defining a platform that we cannot extend for each particular use case.
I agree on that, but the point is that I don't see the use case for actually explicitly using a Meego button. So I agree with you that, for example, Meego might have some hypothetical UI components which are not available on other platforms. But for the simple case of a push button, I can see a valid use case where you want to specify the theme explicitly. You want to see, we want to set, I want a native behavior, I want my custom button. So this is the point I'm trying to state. Yes. I agree with you that, I mean, we also have some native widgets in Qt.
Oh yeah, no, point taken. I think it's a valid feedback. It's important to get this feedback, and we're also thinking about those. So just the case is that we're still working on it. This is still like work in progress research, and we don't want like to say now that we have this API that works for all cases. I agree with you that the button is really one case we see, like so we might have some similar API and we want to maybe achieve that, but we don't have that right now. So technically, it's easy for us to provide a way of importing a component and we automatically deciding as Qt. Oh no, if you're running in Meego, you're going to get the Meego components. If you're running on MX, you're going to get the MX components. So technically, that's probably the easy part, but we still want to research more. We're really like in the beginning, in the first phases of the project, and we want to have more styles implemented before we say, oh, this is an API that makes sense for these styles.
Okay, that's great. Okay, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm very happy to hear that this eventually may go to desktop, and I'm a desktop developer. So for us, the priority is to have certain compatibility between current C++ API and this new API, because quite frankly, the last thing I want is to learn yet another API. So are you planning to have at least property names compatible between C++ and Qt Quick and stuff like that, so we have as little new things to learn as possible?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. We basically, when we're implementing, what we're doing is, and when we're implementing the base logic, the base reusable logic that we're doing, for example, for the slider, I think we're looking at the code, what's in the Qt slider models, in the Qt code, but we're not copying it. So we're basing our code and our new APIs, and we're looking into it's there in Qt, but we don't have any promise that the API is going to be the same. But of course, we don't want to be reinventing at least property names and things that the more we can harmonize that, especially because we have maybe this vision that we can provide a component set that might be reusable across desktop and even mobile. So for these use cases, the less differentiation, especially in property names we have, the better for the application developer. So that's one thing we're definitely looking into. This one question.
Thank you. Do you see a chance to get layouts returning, so that we can get away without explicitly specifying every single button position on the layout?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Qt Quick is extensible, so if you see a use case for that, then it might be a valid point. So you can create new elements and expose that to QtQML. But I think that's more a question of QtQML providing it than rather the components themselves. Today we're not dealing with the layouting in the Qt components. So if we're using what Qt Quick provides us, which are the anchor layouts, and at least for the application we're developing it, we're seeing that the anchor layouts can get you pretty far. You can do most of the things. If you have a use case, or we in Qt components, we're also analyzing that. If you see a point where Qt Quick doesn't provide you as much functionality as you want, you can always extend it by providing your own elements. But
I can.
On a side note, and perhaps a little bit off topic, but the Qt component seems like a huge project. So I've been wondering, what are your experiences with a huge project with lots of code and source files in QML? Do you have any hints and points and bad ideas to try out when working with a large QML project?
okay. Yeah, first of all, I think it might give you the impression that it's huge, but it's actually, if you look in at least I have the impression that it's quite small, at least now, at least from the code base. We have several QML files, but we're not yet in a point where we do selective QML for each platform. So we just have a couple of QML files that we deploy when you do the specific platform import. But from what I see, I think we need a good support, that's my personal opinion, in the tooling for helping out for application developers, especially for dealing, because in QML today we don't have a way of specifying which platform we are running on. So the easiest way, if you're targeting different platforms and you want to create different QML files, is probably to have separated QML files. And then for the deploy, of you selecting the right QML file to deploy on your platform. And another point, maybe, I know if that's related to your question, is that also in the Meego application at least, we're trying to promote a good architecture for developing with QML, where you can take the dependencies between the reusable part of your application, the code logic, and the UI. You separate those, and then you can have the reusable part of your application be the same, and that simplifies you targeting different platforms. So you can have the reusable part be the same and just have different QML files for the parts that are really different in the UI. And then probably maybe the best solution can be having different QML files that you can know this is a QML file, how it looks in that platform. And you have a different QML file for another platform.
Yeah, this is like kind of follow on to that really. Do you have any like best practices or advice for how to segregate functionality between QML and C++? I'm a little bit, I see that this can be a very powerful technology, but I'm a bit like worried that we're going to end up with a mess of like business logic in like both layers. Yeah. And it could easily be kind of messy.
Yeah, so that was, as I said before, was one of the reasons we started this Meego application. Was to provide this one reference and architecture for using QML together with C++ backends. Because as a new technology, there's several ways of using it together. You can do your application all in QML. You can do C++ in integration with QML in different ways. One way that we think it's rather powerful is the one that we're using in the Meego application, which is you have your model, which can fetch things from the network. You can have resource-intensive calculations. You can have that in C++, and then you just expose that inside the QML context. So a QML UI is basically logic agnostic from the business logic perspective. It just deals with the view, with the logic that's required for creating your user interface. And then you plug into this interface a model. So suddenly the QML becomes aware of a property called model. And then you can just bind the values, like the values that are going to be reflected in the user interface are coming from this property object from the model one, and then everything is turned alive by connecting the C++ backend with the QML user interface. Yes, it's an analogy for the web hybrid development, where you have web for the thin client and for the user interface, and you can have C++ for the more resource-intensive tasks.
I just wanted to second the request for a cross-platform API. I mean, this is cute. Write once, compile everywhere, right? Obviously, you can't do that across the entire device spectrum, but if devices are simple and similar with just a simple UI, I mean, a calculator, you shouldn't have to rewrite that for a different platform.
Yeah, I agree that the example of the calculator is one that shows to the eyes that you don't want to rewrite that to the different platforms. But I think one thing that at least we as Qt, we want to take a step back, is that we don't want to push the solutions that we have on the desktop today to the mobile platforms and to the platforms we don't have yet so much experience with today. So I think we need to take into account what are the requirements for the new problems we want to solve. And from what we are discussing so far, there are different problems. There is if we can see the application developers in a grayscale, there will be application developers on the white end of the scale, which want to have the most ease of use and the easiest to create one button and have that deployed across all devices with the less effort. We can maybe call them the free application developers that are going to put them applications to download for free. But on the other spectrum, we also might have the application that want to be really customized for the look and feel for that device. And there is not a magic solution that you can go get these applications that are on one spectrum and magically turn them on the other spectrum of the problem. And we in Qt Components, we are trying to reach as many developers as possible. So that we don't want to compromise on one solution that's going to limit on where we want to go. We want to take an approach that's more similar to what Qt Quick did. Qt Quick didn't provide you so much of ease of use in this first release. We did that as a conscious choice. We wanted to provide the base elements that you can work on and you can do whatever you want to, and you can go and implement whatever idea you have. So we also want to take this step by step. And the first step we want to do is implement a lot of styles. We want to have commons APIs and pieces of reusable codes. But the more use cases that we see, the concrete use cases that we see with applications running on different platforms, of course, we want to also to target them. And if you see, like, for the calculator, it makes sense. We want to also address those cases that you get the button and then you get the button natively or looking the same on all devices.
Hi. As an application developer, can I do everything what I used to do with Qt native widget? Like, for example, let's take Qt push button. Everything what I used to do, can I do everything in QML as well? With whatever component you are going to provide, let's take Meego push button, something like that. We don't know yet. Like, we don't have the Qt widget API in Qt Quick. That's not what we're trying to do as a primary focus of the project. Okay. So we're still researching on this. We want to have as less. We know our mission is to make application developers' life simpler, and that's we're of course taking care of. But that doesn't mean for us of having the Qt widget API implemented in Qt Quick. That's not what we're at least trying to do right now. So there is no guarantees yet that the push button API is going to be the same.
Okay, thank you. By the way, after this discussion, actually, I agree with you, and I see your point when you say you want to differentiate the desktop market and the mobile market. But if you wanted use cases, I can provide some more. For example, how are you going to implement the desktop theme? The desktop theme will work on macOS, on Windows, and on Linux. You will have to implement 3 different backends already. So you are already doing some cross-platform work. So my proposal is, I see the point of differentiating. So why not providing a desktop set, a mobile set, a handset set, for example, and not specifying Meego, Symbian, or whatever? Because, okay, I see Nokia's point. I know why you want to push on Meego UI and whatever, and I see the reason. But still, please remember that your clients are still developers. And to attract clients, you have to provide something very concrete. So actually, providing those kind of, global sets like mobile, desktop, netbook, handset. That will be a great compromise. Maybe you can even think about merging the mobile and the netbook handset, so that you can actually force developers to do the right thing for their UI, and still you are being cross-platform and whatever. And I think that this kind of problem will be encountered when you will try to implement the desktop stuff. For example, I see you're using KDE. So you know KDE is steamable. How are you going to do that in QML? You will still have to look up some stuff. So I think that this kind of approach will be natural to you, because you, at the moment, just implemented the very static styles. But when it gets dynamic, you will already, smash your head against this kind of problem. So, I mean, just a proposal. Try considering it.
No, yeah, it's good to have this feedback, and I can show you this one slide that we have. It's not in the presentation, but exactly with this idea of breaking them out and providing component set for each platform. So exactly, these are things that we are thinking on, and I didn't put it on the presentation because we don't want to see that, oh, this is the solution. We don't have that yet, and that's the problem. Like we're foreseeing that we want to have a common API, that we want to have a base component set to work from, and to be more than specific to some styles, we need actually to have more experience to work with different styles. We had last week a workshop where we talked with Plasma developers and also with the Meego developers that are from the Meego Touch. And the more the styles we get, I think we can get a more conscious and more stable decision of what is this API that we want to provide on the mobile specifically. And then the more styles we have on desktop, we can get that. And in a possible scenario, we can see, as you said, how we can merge what are the components that are same across these categories. But we are thinking about these problems, and we are aware. It's just that as an approach, maybe we're taking a bit of a step backward. That is like, let's start with concrete styles and implement that and see what API we can get from the more things we see. The API we can think that's good for most application developers. We're doing this project to help application developers. We are doing the project to help you. So your feedback is important, but on the other hand, give us some time too, so we can research, and we don't want to overcommit. That's maybe one message that we can take out of this, that we're trying to do the right thing, but we want to take it a bit slowly and research, and not trying to come here and say, oh, we have the solution for all your problems. We want to know what your problems are from very different points of views, and then try to think how we can help in the best way.
Okay. One last question, maybe? No. Okay, then I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation, and now please join us in the Winter Garden for the last coffee, and also in the Nokia session, and please give a hand to our presentation.